What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Fantastic Decks and How to Pilot Them. I wanted to go through first before I've been working on a piece of content for like 2 weeks now. Sorry, Ethan. And I thought about it and I was really excited to put this thing out there. And then I realized when I started doing it, it didn't feel right because I was explaining a bunch of things that I really haven't given any of you guys a basis on why I find these important or how I utilize these things. And it was making the whole video like way too long. So I wanted to give you guys some insight into how I do deck building in general and what is the process from the idea through the final list that I put together when I'm going to build it. How would I go about doing that, and how do I do it online and in a way that really always results in an effective deck that will operate well? It doesn't mean that it's one that's going to be fun and I'm going to like it, because you really got to play it before you know if you're going to like it or enjoy it. But it is a way that pretty much every time I've done this, it always makes a deck that works. So I wanted to share that with you guys before I get into the kind of review of somebody else's deck list and how I would edit it, because I would edit it using kind of this guidelines of how I build decks. So let's do this first, and then I'll get to that piece of content next. But first, the way we're going to do this is we're going to do it by example. So I'm going to go over to EDHREC. I am going to pick a random commander, and then I'm going to build a baseline, and I'm going to show you guys a walkthrough of exactly how I go from start to finish building this type of deck. So we're going to go EDHREC, great site. I'm going to click this random button here, and we're going to land on Kydel. Isn't as good because as a partner, I don't want to do two partners. So let's pick another one. Ixhel, Scion of Atraxa, Abzan, Flying Vigilance, Toxic 2. At the beginning of your end step, each opponent who has 3 or more poison counters exiles the top card of their library face down. You may look at and play those cards as long as they remain exiled, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast those spells. So, this is going to be a good one to start with, because this, we can actually do a lot of work editing and playing around with what we want to do here, and this is a good example for how we can make something. I know that there are tons of decks that have already been made off of this, but I'm going to show you my deck building template for how to build something like this and how I would go about starting a build or considering a build for this commander. And then we can go from there and show you the template of walking through making little different Mox Field is what I tend to use, but you can do it with anyone. But just making little tags that attach to each card and then referencing each of those. So let's go through and let's do a base deck build in Mox Field. We're going to go through here and we're going to make a new deck. We're going to type in Ixhel, Fantastic Commander content, because this is Fantastic Commander content, right? Ixhel, Scion of Atraxa. Let's create this. And now, what I do from here is I look at the card that is an Abzan, and I look at what I want to do with this card. All right, when I have a commander, I think of an idea like, what am I trying to accomplish with this deck? So it says Flying Vigilance, Toxic 2. So probably something related to the Toxic 2. And it says Corrupted at the beginning of your end step. Each opponent who has 3 or more poison counters exiles the top card of their library face down. You may look at and play those cards for as long as they remain exiled, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast those spells. So this is very clearly you want to get 3 poison counters on as many opponents as possible, as fast as possible, and then draw 3 extra cards off of their deck each turn, basically. And so your commander has Toxic 2. I don't think you're going to want to wait till turn 4 before you start getting poison counters on people. So basically, my idea of looking at this is, okay, I have a commander that benefits from when my opponents have poison counters on them and gives me value so that I can continue to draw a lot of cards and increase my chances of just playing more spells than my opponents can using the commander's ability if they are corrupted. So I want lots of low cost, low mana cost creatures or spells that infect my opponents and give poison counters or proliferate the poison counters that they have early in the game, so that when my commander comes down, immediately I can just draw bunches of cards off of my opponent's decks and then use that to win the game. So with that, I know one thing I'm looking for are low mana value creatures that can infect or proliferate. And then I'm also going to be looking at anything that rewards for casting other people's spells or using other people's creatures, doing things with other people's decks. And then from there, how do I win the game is the next thing. And cards that use other people's decks are always complex to figure out how to win the game off of using other people's decks. However, generally a good way to go about doing that. This has Toxic too, and you're going to be trying to proliferate poison counters quite a bit. So other ways to do that, most decks that you're going to play have creatures or have spells that make creatures. Or you can make, go wide enough with different creatures that, Crater Hoof type effects will still work to win the game in this way. And so I would look at using the Toxic to create different, cast other people's spells off the top of their decks and use, any Crater Hoof overrun type effects to infect with commander damage, infect with overrun damage, or, Triumph of the Hordes is going to be a great card that's definitely going to go in this deck. Things like that. So what I'm looking for is going to be low mana value, infect or proliferate creatures, and then ways to take advantage of getting all of the extra cards off of my opponent's decks, and then overrun type effects that will win the game once I have have just accumulated way more value off of my opponents than they can compete with. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start pulling a bunch of cards like that, and I'm going to go, we'll be back in just a second. I'll show you where and how I go through doing that. All right, so now we are going to go to one of my favorite parts of just scanning through cards in Scryfall to navigate our Ixhel build that we're going to try and look at. And we're going to use the advanced search, which is one of my favorite things here. There's a ton of ways to do this. But we're going to look at different versions of Infect or Toxic. So basically, the way I go through this is Scryfall is extremely intuitive, very easy to use. Select your commander and the colors that are in your commander's color identity. You can type in creatures. I'm not going to type in creatures. You can type in a bunch of there's every type of, type line that's available. But I want to put in Infect first. Colors of my commander's color identity. And then legal in commander. And then I'm going to put, for this one, I don't necessarily want big infect creatures. I want low mana value, things lower than my commander's mana value for infect creatures. So I'm going to put mana value is lower than 4, because that's less than my commander's mana value. Legal in commander, Abzan color identity, infect first. Let's search with these options. 29 cards. So we have Blight Mamba, Contagious Nim, Cyst Bearer, a bunch of these. I'm going to go through the ones that I think are probably the most relevant, and then and now I just add those to my deck. So Blight Mamba, maybe Contagious Nim, 2/2 infect, so 2 poison counters. That's good. So we'll go Contagious Nim. Let's do Glistener Elf, because that's a 1 mana. Sorry, let's get out of the Ixhel over there. Can't spell today, sorry guys. Flenzermite is a 1/1 infect lifelink, maybe. Ichor Claw Mirror is good because then that also, you know, people don't want to block that. So what I'm doing here is I'm just going through and adding individual cards that match this infect synergy, and then I can add those, stack those up in our list, and I'm not worrying about which ones are better than others, just ones that I think that I will want to use in the deck. And then we can cut once we have all of the different ones that we think might be relevant, and cut back to what are the best ones for this build. So I'm going to pause here, and then we'll just skip forward to once I'm finished, you know, putting all of these different infect little creatures in the deck, and then we'll start on the next section. Okay, we're back. I looked through a bunch of these, and now I want to highlight, after we look through our tokens and our toxic and infect different options, I looked through everything, I had the same settings, and I just changed the keyword from infect to toxic to proliferate, and then found a bunch of cards that, you know, all fit that mold, you know, under 4 mana, have infect, toxic, or proliferate in some capacity. And then now I'm going to go, you can do this in either order. I like to find things that I'm interested in first and find as many different things that, you know, would be interesting to me to put in the deck. And then I go to Ixhel, where we found our commander in the first place, and we look at, you know, it's an infect, not Phyrexian, so let's look at Ixhel and the infect, you know, commander damage or infect damage as commander Ixhel recommendations, and let's see if we can find anything else that we want to add that I didn't add from those others. So I did see this one, whenever an opponent commits a crime, proliferate. Could be good. Not, I don't love this one because you have to depend on your opponents. Secure Secundi, draw cards equal to power, not really as relevant here. Add green for each creature. That could be okay for a Vendo. That's not ideal though, so let's wait on that. So this one, since it doesn't have toxic, infect, or proliferate, this one is actually something that wasn't on my list, but is great for this deck. Phyresis Outbreak, give every opponent a poison counter, and then hurt all of their stuff. So let's, you know, and then same here. Infectious Inquiry and Phyresis Outbreak, great cards for the deck. So let's add those. All right. Let's go back. Vraska's Fall. Each opponent sacrifices a creature, Planeswalker, and gets a poison counter. Yeah. Norn's Decree. That's also fantastic. Yeah, Norn's Decree looks great in this deck also. Because then it also adds poison counters if they swing at each other, and they get to draw cards for swinging at each other, and when one or more creatures an opponent controls do combat damage to you, they get a poison counter. Yeah, this is also good. Norn's Decree, Vraska's Fall. Yeah, these are great cards in the deck. But keep in mind, we're adding just a ton of stuff. We may cut some of these also. Doesn't mean that they're going to make the deck based on our needs. It's just, this is how I go through and add cards that would make sense. 5/5 Trample Toxic 1 for 5 is not what we want in this deck. It is at the beginning, if they have 3 or more poison counters, draw a card, then you may put a land card from your hand on the battlefield. So that is potentially good for the deck. Because it works the same way your commander does. It's probably a solid thing to play after your commander. I don't know. I'm going to put it in the list. I don't know that it's one that we're going to keep because you want to have early high synergy, early drops to get poison counters, so by the time you cast your commander, which will be a magnet for removal, you've already got the poison counters, so you can then hopefully get to instep easier. But I will put this one and the Icharats in there. Icharats I was debating on, but I'll just go ahead and put it in as a test. And then we're going to continue looking through all of these different options in, the list for this through EDHREC. And I'm going to add a bunch of them to the deck, and then we'll go from there and start doing some other adjustments for other things that we may need. So I'll pause here, and then we'll skip to that part, and we'll check the deck list back out after I've added a bunch of these. Okay, we're back now, and we've gotten all of our cards tagged that we put into this, and some of these we're going to cut, but we tagged all of them. We have 55 main. We're going to add quite a few more to this, but this informs us with what we want to add and how, because most everything that we've got here is going to be on plan in some case. It's going to be some version of getting toxic or infect poison counters on our opponents early, and then taking advantage of them having poison counters to either, benefit us by drawing cards off their decks late in the game, or giving us the ability to close out and win the game on our own. So what I've done is I've gone through each of these. Like I said, I enabled the tags that we were talking about, and now we're going to actually look at them to see what we need to add to supplement this deck. There might be some that are, we might not want, for example, 39 poison counter, synergy cards, especially if some of them are really not that synergistic with the rest of the deck. Like I believe Contagious Nim is just plan and poison. Even though it's a 2/2 infect, that's solid. For 3 mana, we might not just want to plan just a poison creature in that 3 mana slot. Because we do have a lot of other 3 mana creatures or 3 mana things, such as Annex Sentry that also is removal and does poison counters. And then we have, things like Duelist of Deepface that has First Strike, so it's a better version to get one poison counter on. We also have things like our, what is this girl? Venerated Rot Priest that, Viridian Corruptor. That's 3 mana for a 2/2 infect that also blows up an artifact. So that's removal and poison. So we may not want a 3 mana just infect creature. But now that we know what we have 12 proliferate cards, about 32 plan cards, which means either they are something that is going to infect our opponents early or reward us for having 3 poison counters on our opponents. And then we have things that do the poison counter attribution, if you will. And then we also have card advantage, and I made a separate category for Death Touch, specifically because Finn the Fangbearer was one that I found as a really good win con in this deck. So whenever a creature you control with Death Touch deals combat damage to a player, that player gets 2 poison counters. So in this case, I think part of the way that this deck is going to be really, really dangerous and really problematic for our opponents is if we have Finn the Fangbearer, or even if we don't, if we give our infect or our toxic creatures Death Touch, they become a lot harder to block, and all of a sudden, now with Finn the Fangbearer, we can just kill someone out of nowhere if we have something that, all your creatures gain Death Touch and you've got 4 creatures, even if it's your opponent's stuff. Now Finn the Fangbearer out, these Death Touchers now become lethal immediately. So there's a lot of things like that will work for the deck. We may not keep Finn and the Death Touch synergy in, because we may need a lot more just specifically getting poison counters on and then going over the top with our overrun effects. However, I still think adding Death Touch as a sub-theme for the overrun effects is really good, because anytime you give Trample on top of Death Touch, it assigns 1 damage, and all of the trample damage goes to the opponent. So even if we're just trampling over without Toxic or without anything else, if everything has Death Touch and all of a sudden we give it +3/+3, instead of, a 5/5 trample and they've got, a 4/5 blocker, Now all of a sudden you're still hitting them for 4 damage, even though they block with their 4/5. And so it's with each creature that you have. So it all of a sudden makes it a lot more likely if we have a lot of death touch synergies that when we use our overrun effects, that they will work substantially better. So with that, this is the main things that we've got in the deck. We have our proliferate, we have our poison, we have our plan. We're low on card advantage. Especially in decks like this, Ixhel is going to get us some card advantage from our opponents, just naturally by having a lot of these plan cards. So we can go a little lighter than we normally would, but I am still a stickler on having a ridiculous amount of card advantage in every deck that I play. And so I still think this needs to be over 10 to 12, including in addition to your commander's card draw automatically. So because I would run like 15 to 17 if your commander didn't provide card advantage. So so the fact that this is only 7, I think we need to add more. And also I want to clarify as well. I label these as card advantage, not card draw. And there's a very distinct difference. Card advantage means you can get more cards than the card that you invested. So basically, if you play this one card, you get at least 2 cards back for it. So things that are like Tormenting Voice, or the Cathartic Reunion, or any of those like Bitter Reunion that's like 2 mana, discard a card, draw 2 cards. It's not card advantage because you're playing a card and discarding a card, so you're down 2 cards to draw 2 cards. So you're at card parity, you get better selection, and they're not bad cards to play, but they are not card advantage. You are not gaining more cards than you had before you played them. So they have their place, but I never want to consider them card advantage in my decks. So we do need to add some more of that. And we also are going to need to add a good bit more ramp. The deck so far doesn't have a very high mana curve, but this is still 4 ramp spells is way too low. And these are synergistic ramp spells, but we're in green, very easy to find really good quality ramp spells. And since we're going to be going with the overrun effects type thing, most likely, I'd say we want to go with a mix of some of the land-based ones, because if we get board wiped, we're screwed. You don't want to just like over-index on creature ramp. But the 1 mana elves are probably a good call here. And some of the like 1 mana, Utopia Sprawl type enchantments. So we're going to look at early 1 mana to 2 mana ramp spells. And we want 1 and 2. Generally, we could run Cultivates and Kodama's Reaches as well, because the other thing that I want to make sure we highlight is our plan is to cast our commander and immediately take advantage of our commander being on the battlefield. The Toxic 2 is kind of irrelevant for your commander, per se, specifically, because you don't want to ever really cast this commander, because it is going to be a Lightning Rod for removal. You don't want to cast it and not already have at least 2 people at 3 poison counters. And so what that means is most likely you're not going to be casting it before turn 4 anyway, because you want those early plays, ramp, and your plan cards to be getting in there, getting poison counter damage, proliferating and building up those poison counters, so that when you cast your commander, you at least have 2 opponents at 3 or more poison counters, so that way you can immediately take advantage of the draw. The worst possible way this deck could function is to cast your commander early on turn 3, and then somebody remove it before you get to untap and then attack somebody on the next turn, and you've not drawn any cards, and now it's 6 mana to recast it, and you're just way behind in that scenario. So we're going to move forward here. I'm going to go find us the same way. I'm going to go look through things, staples that you know of, go through EDH Rec, Scryfall, look for ramp spells, look for card advantage spells, and things that that fit in these colors. If it has proliferate or can synergize, even better. But let's go look for a bunch of those and add those to the deck and get our build overall to a good place with our card advantage, our protection, our removal, which is surprisingly good already at 10 removal spells that are also synergistic, and 7 win cons is a good amount of win cons already in the deck. So I don't think we need many win cons. We don't really need much removal. We're probably going to add like a Path to Exile and a Withering Torment to take care of enchantments. swords to plowshares, and a few other things to really round out our removal because they're just that good. Because we don't have to have some of these things. Like Glissa Sunslayer, I put as removal because she can, if she hits, destroy target enchantment, but it's only enchantment removal. So it's not quite the same as more generic, like, you know, generous gift stuff or Beast Within, which we might add in here as well, that just takes care of everything. So we're going to go find those. We're going to find more ramp spells. We're going to find more card advantage. And we're going to put everything in here, tag it with where it belongs, and then we're going to come back. Okay, we're back, and we've got now all of our cards added to the deck that are going to be the basis for our build here. We have 15 card advantage, 15 ramp, 39 poison cards, 4 protection cards, which seems a little light, but, with enough draw from other people, other players have a lot of protection spells a lot of times, or if you're going to be hitting enough of them, you'll probably be able to find counter spells or things that could protect your commander there as well. We have 9 Death Touch related items, 15 removal spells, 8 win cons, and 13 proliferate options with a lot of poison counters. Now, what we're going to do, and 15 card advantage along with your commander, which we might not need that much because the commander does draw a lot from your opponents. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at how we can cut this down because we have 80 in the main deck. And 2 of them are lands. So, where's the lands here? Sorry. Let's filter it back to disable tags. 3 of them are lands. So we got Inkmoth Nexus, Mirex, and Vault of the Archangel, which none of those provide colors. So we're going to keep those 3 lands. We're at 80. We want to get to 67 cards in the, 63 cards in the deck that are non-lands. So we have 80 including 3 lands right now. So we need to cut down to 66. So we need to cut 14 cards out of these 80. And then we will have our deck kind of built overall and we'll have, a good solid build. That's all we do now is we cut down to 63. I think 37 lands is a solid amount of lands. When you look at your curve, is full of 1, 2, and 3 drops. There's not many 4, 5, and 6 drops. There are some. And you'll be casting off your opponent's deck a lot, but you really want these early plays to be really valuable and then just start drawing off of your opponent's decks and using their win cons to win the game if you can. But your deck's going to be loaded with all of these early plays. Therefore, if we're going to be doing that, we need to look at what we have in the deck that's going to help facilitate that plan as good as possible while continuing to allow us to draw cards and take advantage of protecting our commander and keeping our plan online. So we need to cut 14 cards from this deck to get us down to 37. Normally I'd say 38 if you've got a little higher mana curve, but in this case we don't. So we're going to want to go to 37 lands, I think. And with that, if we're going to be at 37 lands, we got 3 here. We need 66 cards left because minus 3 would be 63 non-land cards in the deck. So with that, I'm going to start looking at which ones are basically, I'm going to look at everything going through and look at the tags and which ones have the least crossover. So plan poison removal is 3. It's good. Beast Whisper only has 1, but when you look at the deck, it's got 41 creatures in the deck right now, and odds are it's going to have most of those, or it's going to be well over 30. Which means Beast Whisper, especially if you're pulling creatures off of your opponent's libraries as well, this thing's going to be triggering all the time. So this is a fantastic card advantage spell, and even though it's only got 1 tag, I still think it's worth keeping in the deck. Rather than trying to go with more tags or just exclusively more tags. You want the best cards in this one. So this is also why you want cards like Annex Sentry that has 3 tags, because it's a poison and a removal spell, which means it takes up those 2 slots, the plan and the removal slot. So that way you save one of those slots and you can play a more powerful Beast Whisperer which is a much better card advantage spell, even though it doesn't take up multiple slots. So then now all of your cards don't take multiple slots, but you can get the really good ones in certain slots, and then other ones that are more flexible can take up multiple slots. And then when you draw, the more that you have that take up multiple slots, when you draw them, they can do multiple different things. And then you can also continue your plan from there. So we're going to look through, let's see, what we got. Bilious Skull Dweller, Death Touch, Plan Poison. I think that's enough. Birds of Paradise is a great, same thing as Beast Whisperer, fantastic early ramp. Blightbelly Rat, it's a toxic and a poison spell for 2 mana. I think that's good. Bloated Contaminator is very good. It's going to have Proliferate and Trample and Poison, so I think it's very good for the deck. Bloodroot Apothecary, 3 mana for a 3/3 toxic 2. When it enters, you and target opponent each create a treasure token. When an opponent sacrifices a non-creature token, the player gets 2 poison counters. I think that this is a really interesting way that you can hose some decks if, like, you know, if somebody's playing a treasure deck or a clue deck or something. This just instantly makes them, I have to deal with this or my game's offline. So this is really cool for that reason. Cankerbloom takes up multiple different roles, which I think is really good. It can proliferate or destroy artifacts and enchantments. Champion of Lamholt is a win con in the deck, and you're casting creatures, but this one only really serves that purpose. It is just a win con. And we have 8 win cons in the deck, so that might be on the chopping block. Let's continue looking and see. Contagious Nim is one that we mentioned earlier that is just Infect, and it's a 3 mana Infect, and we've got better Infect. I think I'm going to actually cut Contagious Nim here. I think that's not going to be, it's not going to make the cut. It's not quite good enough. Contaminated Grafter is 5 mana, but that's also card advantage, trample, poison, and proliferate. So this is going to be very good. Crawling Chorus is just poison and plan, but if it dies, it makes another poison creature, so it's pretty good, and it's only 1 mana to keep our plan online. Duelist of Deep Faith, Duelist of Deep Face, get faced, Duelist. He will face your opponents here because he's got first strike as well on your turn, so that's pretty good. Enduring Innocence is, like the others, it's a fantastic card draw spell. Creature with power 2 or less enters, draw a card once each turn. And we've got, right now, somewhere in the neighborhood of like 25 to 30 of those. And you also can cast, you know, creatures off your opponent's cards too and trigger this. So I still think this is worth it. It's another really good card draw spell. Evolution Sage is exactly what the deck wants to be doing. You play land and proliferate stuff, you'll get there very quickly on that. Finhorn Elves, if we've got... let's look at our plan cards, or look at our tags. We got 15 ramp now. And Finhorn Elves and all of the elves are just exclusively ramp. Birds gets you fixing, but just mono green elves. If we're looking at the other ramp spells, I actually think we're going to cut Kodama's Reach. We don't need Reach and Cultivate, so we've got Cultivate, so let's just leave Cultivate and not have that and Reach. I don't want to run more than just Finhorn and Llanowar elves, really, because those are ones that really quickly die if somebody board wipes. You're really out of luck with those. I think 14 ramp is good here. I don't want to go any more than that. We could cut an elf if we desperately need to later, though. So let's go back to our untagged. Finn the Fangbearer is on plan. It's going to be a win con. Glissa is very good. She also is removal, but she's also combat damage to draw cards and remove counters from permanents, so you can take stuff off if you need to. 1 mana for a 1/1 Infect. It is on plan. It is early. It is easy to use, and it does lower the power of your opponent's stuff if they block with it, so their 5/5 becomes a 4/4. Maybe worth it. Grateful Apparition is a 2 mana for a flying 1/1, but when it deals combat damage to anyone, you can proliferate. So I think that this is good enough because early on, if we play Glistener Elf, for example, on turn 1, get in there with that, and then, you know, next turn, Grateful Apparition can hit anyone. Now everybody that gets hit is at 2 poison counters, especially if Glistener Elf gets in on somebody else on turn 2. Now both of those players have 2 poison counters instead of just 1. So I think that this is worth it. Ichor Mirror, same type thing, 2 mana, but then if it blocks like a 5/5, that 5/5 just stays a 2/2 for the rest of the game. That's really good, or it is blocked by a 5/5. So then Ichor Rats, 3 mana for a 2/1 Infect, but when it comes in, each player automatically gets a poison counter. which does include you, so do pay attention to that. But I think that that's worth it early enough. Jawbone Duelist, double strike with Toxic and hit and get 2 poison counters. The Elves, okay. Metastatic Evangel, whenever a non-token creature enters under your control, proliferate. That's going to be right on plan. Very easy to keep popping poison counters there. Necrogen Rot Priest is 4 mana, so it's a little late on plan, but it also can give creatures Death Touch. It has Toxic too, and a creature with Toxic, when it deals damage, it gives an extra poison counter, so I think that this is still worth it in the deck. Orion Frostfang is a fantastic Death Toucher and card draw. Pestilent Siphoner, 2 mana for a flying Toxic 1. I like the flying on it. The Toxic's going to help. Phyrexian Crusader, first strike, protection from red and white, infect. So this thing is going to be super powerful in this deck. Even though it's a 2/2, you swing at somebody with first strike. If they block with like a 4/4, it first strike hits it, drops it down to a 2/2. And then when it deals damage, they trade. Or sorry, no, they wouldn't trade. It would still kill this, but then now it can drop their 4/4 down to a 2/2, or especially like in a 3/3, if for example, if they block with a 3/3, turns the 3/3 into a 1/1, and the 1/1 when it deals damage back doesn't kill it. So this one's interesting, and it can get in for a lot of damage, and it has pro red and white, so you can get around, really evasive. I think that'd be very good for the deck. Swarmlord makes a ton of infect tokens depending on how much poison counters you get on your opponents. Definitely like that one. Plague Mirror, ramp and infect. Plague Stinger, flying and infect, which is better than your what's this guy? The little flyer here. Pestilent Siphoner. So that's flying Toxic 1 for 2 mana, and this is flying Infect for 2 mana, which the Infect is going to do more against other creatures than Toxic will. So I think it's probably worth it. This one's definitely better than the Pestilent Siphoner. So we might cut the Siphoner, but we do want 2 flyers. The more flyers you can have, the better. Pollen Bright Druid, 1 and a green. I think we're going to cut Pollen Bright Druid. It enters, it can put a counter on something, or it can proliferate, but I don't know. Proliferate you need kind of on the side, and this is early. You're not growing creatures as much. It's not as helpful. It's a good card, but I think we need to make specific cuts, and I think that this one's just going to be not as good as some of the other things that could be in the deck. Let's see. Priests of Norn, Vigilance 1/4 for 3 with Infect. It's going to be hard to block, but it doesn't really have any sort of evasion. That's, again, maybe a debate. Sereth is another debate. Even though she's very good, she can protect your stuff. I think we have to keep her in the deck because just being able to untap and give something hexproof just ad hoc whenever you want is really good. Skrelv is going to be a combination of the protection and the toxic, which is great. Tower Winder with the other ramp that we have, I don't think we need it. It's a Death Toucher that gets you a command tower, which is great, but we have other things that we other ways to get the lands and get the ramp that we need to play. So I think we'll just take the Tower Winder out. He was good. He was something I liked in there for the Finn lines, but I don't think he's necessary. Venerated Rot Priest. Whenever a creature you control becomes a target of a spell an opponent controls, that opponent gets, or becomes a target of a spell. Target opponent gets a poison counter. I like this one in the deck because just putting it out early, even if they can block it and you don't get through, that means anytime they try and kill any of your creatures or your stuff, you're going to get your plan going. So I think we should leave that one. Viridian Corruptor, this is the one that destroys an artifact. Welcoming Vampire, draws you cards. So we're down to 76. We didn't cut near as many as I would have hoped from that, which means I think we're probably going to cut one of the elves. And let's see. Let's go ahead and cut the Llanowar elf. It doesn't matter which one you cut. I think of these ones, I think we probably can get rid of... The Duelist is solid, but not amazing. It makes it hard to block it, but it's not incredible, and any 3/3 basically just kills it. So this one's probably not going to be there, not going to be good enough. Yeah, let's see what else we got. We got Cultivate, Drown in Ichor, um, Harmonize. I think with all of the card draw that we have, Harmonize is not as good as some of the others. And since we've got it all on our commander, we don't necessarily need another Harmonize. Pheresis Outbreak is giving poison counters. Smell Fear is a fight spell plus proliferating, which I think is great. Unnatural Restoration is a little bit of protection to bring stuff back. Viral Spawning. So this is 3 mana, make a 3/3 with Toxic 1, and then you can, once you get to 3 poison counters, you can make another one from your graveyard. You can flash it back. I don't know if that's a 3/3 with Toxic 1 is going to be quite good enough that early, and it's not a creature to trigger our draw creatures, plus it's 3 power, so it doesn't trigger those other ones. So I think I'm just going to cut the Viral Spawning. Again, we're trying to get down to 66 cards, and we've got a lot more. We got 7 more cuts to make, so we've got to be very peculiar about what we're keeping in the deck, because, you know, just objectively we can't keep it all. I think we're going to cut Phyresis as well, as just enchant creature, gives it infect. They kill your creature, you just lose it. So that's not as good. I think we're going to cut... So this is a bit of protection as well. So even if they kill your thing out from under it, sure, they were going to kill it anyway. But then if this lands, then it, you know, gives extra toxic, because you can toxic on top of toxic, and if the creature dies, you can return it to the battlefield. So that's good. I think we're also going to cut Glistening Oil. Those are both good enchantments overall to give infect to things, like if you've got big giant creatures, but we're not running the giant creatures. We're running a bunch of small creatures that we can then pump. And again, we got to be very peculiar with what we're cutting here. Bow of Nylea was a fun add, so it gives the death touch to all your creatures, and then you can pay 1 and a green to, you know, ping something out of the sky or gain 3 life. Put cards from your graveyard on the bottom of your library in any order if somebody's trying to mill you out or something, and then you can also, you know, put a 1/1 counter on stuff in a pinch too. So I think those are good. We added Path, Swords. Tainted Strike is a win con. Don't want to take Tainted Strike out. And then Vraska's Fall gets more poison counters on things too. So we've got that, and then Vraska Betrayal Sting is a very good card draw engine also. So I think we're now going to have to just go back to our creatures and start cutting creatures that we like, but just aren't as good as other creatures. And so we already cut the 1 elf. I think we cut the Duelist of Deep Faith. We cut Crawling Chorus. It's a 1/1. It gets another 1/1, but it's not as good as a lot of these others. I think Champion is worth a cut here, unfortunately. You really need to make sure you get in with creatures and be able to get damage in. And Champion becomes really difficult to deal with, especially if you're proliferating the counters on her. And there's a lot of proliferate we still got in the deck. So I think Annex Sentry, 3 mana Toxic 1, 3 or less until it leaves, is very easy to get rid of, though. This is a removal spell, so let's go back to our tags. Look at our removal. We still have 15, but this is a removal spell that is a plan card also. It's got several things going for it, but it doesn't work as good as a lot of these other removal spells, and it's very easy to kill. Play this for 3 mana, exile their creature with mana value 3 or less. It's not even non-land permanent. It was artifact or creature, so a little bit more flexible there. I just still don't think it's quite worth it since we've got so many cuts to make. We're at 69. We need to cut 3 more. So let's look at what we've got here. Overall, I think Glistener Elf, the 1 mana 1/1 infect. I don't know. That's probably better than Crawling Chorus because people don't want to block it and reduce the size of their creature. Whereas Crawling Chorus, they're going to block this all day, and then they'll block the might that it makes all day also. So I think that the Glistener Elf is a little better. So people don't want to reduce the size of their creatures that much. Icarats we definitely want. Jawbone Duelist I think we definitely want. Metastatic Evangel is going to get us to those counters really quickly. The Necrogen Rot Priest is a debate. it adds additional counters on creatures that have toxic, but we're not relying on as many toxic creatures. We've got a good bit in the deck, but not, let's count them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. See what I'm saying here? Yeah. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, see, that's not going to be enough. I think that that's one of the things we've got to pay attention to with the Necrogen Rot Priest. Whenever a creature you control with Toxic deals combat damage to a player gets an additional poison counter. That with your commander automatically gets anyone to 3 mana. So it is worth noting that you do have that. And if this hits, it automatically deals 3 poison to whoever he hits. But there's only 12, including your commander, creatures that have Toxic in the deck. It's tough. That's a tough one. The one power also triggers all of your card draw things. We're at 3. So yeah, it's a hard call. I'm gonna cut this one. You might all fight me on it if you disagree. Yell at me in the comments. Tell me how stupid I am, why I needed to leave that card. It is very good, but this is kind of like the really tough part when you're getting down to the last 2 or 3 that you need to cut to make the deck function. There's going to be stuff that you've got to cut that's actually really good for the deck. You just have to cut something. So, kind of same thing here. It's a 3 mana 1/4 Vigilance Infect. It's just 3 mana. You know, you've got a lot of other poison and things to make poison, and it's just a Vigilance Infect for 1/4. It's just not that great compared to other things. So I think that we can cut that one. And then from there, I'm trying to see if there's anything else that I think would be really, really good for the deck or something that we don't really need necessarily that would be good to cut. Death Touch, Toxic 1, Birds, Plate Belly Rat, Toxic Proliferate, Canker Bloom. Let's look at this again. What are our tags? Champion. So we still have Finn, Overrun, Swarm Lord, Tainted Strike, Triumph of the Hordes, and Wormquake. Yeah. I think we take Tainted Strike out, actually. That you have to have a certain amount, +1/+0 and gains Infect. If you put that on a toxic creature that's like, you're going to deal Toxic 2, then it deals Toxic 2 plus Infect, so that, you know, then can take someone to, you know, if it's a 2/2 with Toxic 2, then you put that on it, it deals 3 Infect plus 2 Toxic, and that jumps people from, you know, 5 counters when they would think they were going to 7, they just dead. So I think that that is worth putting in the deck. So yeah, you tell me what you would cut here. I'm going to just cut Champion of Lamholt, even though that's probably the wrong call. Honestly, I'm just gonna cut I'm just gonna cut the 1 mana Crawling Chorus guy. Solid, but people will block that thing all day and kill that thing. So it's very, it doesn't scale with the game very well at all. It's going to die very quickly. So, cool. So now we've got our deck, our base build, and now we're going to add our lands in, and I'll guide you through that in the next section. And we're back. I'm sorry it took me like 3 days to get to the land base. It should never take you that long, but I am back. I am starting to work on the mana base now. I'll show you guys how to do that. I have showered, so it's not 3 days without a shower, but I do want to highlight something else as I'm going through this. for you guys to all look at. So we do have our 3 lands here. We're gonna just run with 37. Sorry, Rachel Weeks, sue me. She's gonna come at me. She's gonna find me in my sleep, I'm sure. She swears by 38 lands. I think we can make 38 or 37 work with as much low mana value ramp spells as we have in this deck, and as much card draw, especially with card draw on our commander at 4 mana. I think we'll still be able to make 37 work, but Rachel, don't come hunt me down. So the way to look through this, the easiest way I found to do this is this really, really, really awesome and very easy to do with Moxfield. And there's most other deck builders do the same type of thing. Is you go look at your mana symbols. You have 48%, so 55% of all your symbols, 48% of your total cards, but 55% of your symbols, which means, colorless don't count towards the symbols. So most of your symbols are green, then 27% black, 18% white, which are pips, whatever you want to call them. But the other way to make sure you want to do this, because if you've got Craterhoof Behemoth and Overrun and 4 other really big spells that all have a lot of heavy green at the top, but your low mana value spells don't have that, which is usually odd, but maybe it's something like black where you're running Bolas' Citadel, Peer into the Abyss, and a few other heavy black spells that are high mana value black spells, but your low mana value spells are all green. You might see a more even split here as far as total percentage of symbols, but you still want to lean heavier into green in that situation where I was talking with the Bolas' Citadel and Peer, because your early plays are going to be predicated on having green sources, whereas your later plays are going to be black. And you can even see that with the graph of what percentage of what mana value these are, which is fantastic for this. What we want to do is we want to go up and also enable our tags again, look at our early plays, generally mostly ramp. We want to look at what in our ramp category uses what emblems. So birds, cultivate, elven chorus, Fyndhorn elves, nature's lore. There's really nothing in the ramp category that doesn't need green. So 55% of all of our mana symbols is about what we're going to want to focus on, because we need to make sure we have green early in this deck. If we don't get our Bilious Skull Dweller out on turn 1, that sucks. Whatever, we'll deal with it. Like Blightbelly Rat. Some of these other ones, we'll use our green to find our other colors, but we need to make sure that we have green available, because there's just too much stuff early on in the game that requires green. So that's what we're going to lean into. We're going to go find our lands. And the best place I've found to find lands is Scryfall. You can do searches and you can generally get there with all of Scryfall stuff. But Mana Gathering is fantastic for this. This is super easy. It's just managathering.com. And they even have a feature. In this case, we're doing Abzan. You literally just click the Abzan button. Hey, here are all the lands. So you go hover over this part. Lands, all Abzan lands. Click here. And now all of a sudden you've got all of the lands in whatever format you want, specifically tri-lands or other, for any of these cards that you want, that you can just grab whatever you want to. I'm going to try and drop these in our deck. I'm going to intentionally avoid anything over $10, because this is not meant to be a super competitive deck, so I don't want to make it a super expensive deck. But if you've got shocks and fetches, run them out there. And even the shocks might be a little bit cheap right now. I'm not going to lean heavy on those. I might put some of the others in there, like 6 or 7, but I'm going to draw the line at $10. So if it's under $10, I'll just drop it in. If not, probably won't, just because it's not worth it. But if you got the mana base, if you got the money to buy shocks and fetches and surveil lands and all that stuff, they're all great. Always run them if you can. But if you can't, don't worry about it. You can still make this deck plenty fun and work just fine without them. So I'm going to go through all of that, put those in here, and then we'll look at our deck once it's finished, and we'll look at our overview and play test it one good time, see how it looks. So we have our land base built, and here we are. We have our 100 card main deck. I want to go over some notable lands that I put in here. 37 is our total land count, and if you look at our curve, we're 1, 2, and 3, and then it drops off to 4, 5, and 6. This is why I'm okay with running one less land, so if Rachel does see this, she can forgive me. But our curve tops out at 3, generally. I mean, there's obviously higher ones that are going to be super powerful, but then we'll cast our commander after we have our 3 drops on board, and then continue to just use all of that mana and card advantage to draw more cards, hopefully never missing any land drops from this. But we went into 37 total lands, and I want to make sure I talk about a few notables here. Command Tower, of course, always put this in really any deck that you want to. There's almost no downside, even in a monocolor deck, in running it. Unless you're running a colorless deck, that's the only time that I could see that this doesn't have any place, ever. And, if you're running a monocolor deck, you probably would be better served to put it as a basic land in case you're running something that's like, High Tide, tap an island, get extra mana for mono blue. But in general, if you throw this in every single deck, it's probably not going to ever be just a waste. So with these, I'm just going to touch on anything that is relative or important for these. Most of these are just true duels. I do like the landscapes in any deck. This deck is a little bit heavy on the mana pips, but generally this is an untapped land that taps for colorless, so it can still just play it, tap for mana. But if you don't need a colored mana at that point, or you don't, you find a turn where you don't need a mana, usually there's, one turn where it would be, okay for you to skip out on one thing. You can play your 2-drop ramp spell rather than your 3-drop ramp spell, and then crack this thing, you get your other color pips. And in late game, it's not a fully dead card if you don't need a land and you've got a ton of mana. This thing still, you can cycle it away and get something else. So I really like these in any 3-color deck especially. I think they're objectively just better than things like the tap land. Sandstep Citadel is just objectively a strict upgrade, in my opinion. It thins your deck out. It comes in untapped if you need it to for a colorless. And then if you need to get a color, you just play it, crack it, immediately go get that color. And it's the exact same as a Sandstep Citadel, but it thinned out your deck a little. So I think these things are great, and people should be using these in really any tricolor deck where they can fit, unless you're going super competitive. Same with Exotic Orchard. Any tricolor deck, you always run one of these. I've never played one of these in a tricolor deck, and it just not been able to do what I want. So very, very corner cases, but it's just like, it's well worth the times that it saves you for the times that you don't get what you need out of it. Godless Shrine, put a Shockland in here, $7. Please, if you have Shocklands for $7, send them to me. I've never seen them this low. This is incredible, and I'm going to probably be buying a lot of them because I just keep lands in my mana bases, and there's no world where these stay at this price. I wanted to also touch on Hissing Quagmire. This fits into our Death Touch plan. It's one I don't like just pure tap lands that are 2 colors that often. But this one, 3 mana, turns into a 2/2 black and green elemental with Death Touch. So with Finn, this actually works extremely well out of nowhere. People don't see this coming. Even if it's on a land, they won't pay attention to it. So you can kind of catch people out of nowhere if you play a Finn and they're like 7 poison or something like that. They don't think you have enough Death Touchers. They got 2 blockers or whatever, and you've got 3 creatures. Okay, well, I'll crack the thing, activate Hissing Quagmire, swing with you, and kill you. And people just never see it coming. It's pretty great. Inkmoth Nexus, same thing. We talked about that earlier. Hushwood Verge, any of these Verges, these are all fine cards. We've talked about a lot of these. And you can just go look through any untapped lands that you can find in the Mana Gathering. Use them if you can afford them. I also do like the slow lands, 2 or more other lands. A lot of people are like, oh, well, I don't think that you should be running those. Like, they're early low power or low mana value decks like this. You shouldn't be running those because you want to make sure you don't have untapped lands early. Very, very few times that you're not gonna have, with 37 lands in your deck, you built your deck probably pretty poorly if you don't get to turn 3, or if you have to play one of these early and have other plays that you have to make. So I think that these are always good if you can get them with the slow lands. So run all of these that you can. Again, send them to me if you don't want yours. The rest of these are fine. 2 or more opponent lands, all of those are great. This was right under the border of the value we set. And then, yeah, so we have our deck. We have our open different versions, or we have all of our lands put into it. We have 100 cards. There might be some other utility lands. Shoot me a note in the comment if you disagree with sort of the ones I chose, or if you have some really great suggestions for utility lands that also could work in this. But now we're going to take a quick break and go into a play test of this just to see how it actually starts to work. All right. We're back. We're going to try and get this playtest going before my cat scratches my eyes out because I haven't fed him his wet food yet today. But With this, I do want to highlight, I did quickly make a few changes because I did a few playtests on this. And all of the playtests, I did not hit my 5th land drop, which is bad. I don't understand. 37 lands shouldn't be enough to consistently miss land drops. It's like once every now and then. But that was 3 tests in a row. I missed my 5th land drop. And I did notice a few pieces like the squirrel that makes a treasure and then pings when people sack, and then a few other cards that just don't seem to synergize as well under Utopia Sprawl as well. You have to enchant a forest. It turns out a lot of our lands that are duals are not actually forest lands. So I swapped that out for wild growth to help with the ramp problem, and also helped up the land count to 38. So I have the 3 that I had tagged plus the Death Toucher and these 34. So Rachel will be proud of me. We went up to 38 lands. We added some more, a little bit better ramp, a little bit easier ramp for consistency. And let's do another playtest and see how this one goes. I like seeing a wild growth early. We have 2 removal spells, a really good infect creature, another decent infect creature. Yeah, this is a good starting hand. So Undergrowth Stadium, I can just tap, enchant the Undergrowth Stadium for an extra green. Deathcap Glade, I could, most likely hopefully I'll hit another land drop next turn. I won't have to play as tapped. But either way, I'll still have 2 mana. This is a great starter. All right, so we'll draw. Cool, we got our land drop, Deathcap Glade, so we got 3 untapped lands. This is going to be awesome. Undergrowth Stadium, tap that, put a wild growth on it, good to go. Turn 2. Now we hit our Twilight Mire, even better. So this is 2 or more other lands. It doesn't have to be colorless, so we're gonna, or it doesn't have to be basics. We're gonna play that, and now we're gonna tap. We don't have a white source, so tapping for, so you add a green, you can add black, double black. You can play the Phyrexian Crusader. It's first strike, pro, red, and white with infect. I think it's worth it just to go ahead and get that guy out, because that's 2 infect damage the next turn regardless. You're going to be able to clear out the way for it. So I think it's just worth to go ahead and play this guy next turn. All right, cool. We got a Guardian Project, which is probably what we want, but we don't have another land drop that's white. So that's interesting that we're not getting our white land drops. So this deck is gonna probably just intentionally mess with me to make sure I can't actually show you guys how it should perform, just because of course I'm recording. But we are here with this option. We could clear out the way for our Crusader. It's turn 3. It's first strike, pro, red, and from white. So we probably could just find a place to go ahead and get the damage in. And I think we'll do that. And we'll add a token for a poison counter. We'll add a token for a poison counter. Add a token for a poison counter. And we'll just say that that one was this guy. Add a counter. Add a counter. So they've got 2 poison counters here. And we'll just go ahead and play Guardian Project. We're going to play the Siphoner next turn, and this will help us hit land drops or anything. If we didn't hit our land drops, we're probably not going to play Ixhel. Even if we could play her on time, there's no reason to. We don't have the poison counters, and she would just open herself up to getting removed. So we'll go to next turn. We do have our mana source, which is great for white, but we're not going to need that yet. We're not going to need to play that at this point. I will play the Arcane Signet. Sorry, we aren't going to need to play the white source. But, yeah, and then I'll tap these 2 for the Siphoner. This is a creature spell, trigger Guardian Project, draw a card. We have a Welcoming Vampire also, so we got 2 mana left. This is great. Odds are still probably pretty good that you're going to be able to get in with somebody. Whoever this person is probably has held up mana, but maybe they're red and white. Maybe they can't block. I would assume... I wouldn't want to just hammer one person early with this deck, so if you can get in on somebody else, we're going to assume that we can to spread these out so that then you're not looking like, oh my god, he's going to run over us really quickly. So you swing there, hold up swords. Probably at this point, I'm going to say we're probably going to have to use swords this turn. So we're just going to move it to graveyard. It's probably the case. Most people don't like getting infected, and if you got 2 people with infect counters, people are going to be unhappy about it. So we'll just move to next turn. Birds is fine. And and I think we will end up playing that, but I think we're going to play Welcoming Vampire first. Actually, can we play? I don't think we can play Vamp and Ixhel. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 6 mana. I think we want to play. Let's assume we can get one from the Pestilent Siphoner on one of those guys, and this thing probably can get through. Again, we say this guy's not playing those colors. I think at this point we do want to draw again also. I think it's still not worth it to play Ixhel when we can draw extra cards by playing these guys. So I think what I would do here is I tap this for white, tap these 3 to play the Welcoming Vampire, and then draw a card from Guardian Project. Now we have Tainted Strike. Sorry, probably we should have done it that way. And now we tap Deathcap Glade, play Birds of Paradise, which draws from Welcoming Vampire and Guardian Project. We still don't hit a freaking land drop, but we did hit a ramp spell. So, yeah, I guess then search your library for a forest card, put it on the battlefield, then shuffle. I guess we just go ahead and play that. And I think we have a forest. So let's look in this. I think we have a Forest Plains that it comes in untapped. So let's view all. Hushwood, no. Okay. That's a Surveil land for the Portico. That might be what we want. Let's see if we can get an untapped one. It's not a forest. This is where shock lands come in hand. So yeah, I think we have to go with Lush Portico, just to make sure, which means we don't have path set up. We didn't play our commander, so I don't think it's as big of a deal. We do get to Surveil one. Charge of the Mites, I don't think is as important in this case. It does make us 2 little mite creatures. I think let's just put that in the graveyard, though. I don't think we're going to need that one. All right. But now, and one of these guys we're going to be able to get extra poison counters on from that guy, and then one of them I'm assuming we can get from that. So Ixhel is online with 2 players at this point. So then we're on turn 5, go to next turn, and now we did hit a land drop, thankfully. Now we go to play our swamp. We have 3 non-creature spells, but we do double trigger since Ixhel's 2 power. Double trigger our draw spells. So we'll cast Ixhel for black, green, 1, and white here. We will draw 2. And now we have Swarmlord and Deceptive Landscape. Swarmlord, at the beginning of your upkeep, put a 1/1 green insect with infect for each poison counter your opponents have. So that would be 7. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mana to play cards. So we don't have enough for that one. But what we do have is this Welcoming Vampire and a Tainted Strike, which would get this player to 3. So I think what we would want to do here is if we have to use Path, which I'm assuming we do, we use our Path to clear the way on this guy's board, swing Welcoming Vampire, swing Crusader at one person, swing probably this person who I think we're saying it doesn't have a blocker since it's pro red-white, and then swing Siphoner at this person. So this person adds a counter, add 2, and then we tap this to Tainted Strike on this vampire, so he will deal 3 to this guy. So now all 3 of them have poison counters. It is very possible that at this point your opponents are like, kill your commander. Nothing you can do about that at this point. We didn't have any protection spells for it or anything like that. And we have enough mana, which is Recaster the next turn. But they may be tapped out to not be able to play their cards. So let's go move to end step. And now Ixhel has 3 triggers. So she can has Flying, Vigilance, Toxic 1. Each opponent who has 3 or more poison counters exiles the top card of their library face down. You can look at and play those cards as long as they remain exiled. You may spend mana as though it were mana of any color. Now we have huge card advantage. That's 3 cards a turn for the rest of the game. I mean, even if they kill Ixhel, I just keep playing her most likely because you're going to get access to so many cards that you can do so much with. I mean, unless she's at like 12 mana or something, you probably don't want to do that. But this is a base playset. This is exactly what you would expect this deck to do. And then from here, we play the Swarm Lord next turn, and then you're gaining 10, 11, 12, 13 insects if it survives. And then, I mean, unless they board wipe, they're dead the following turn. So, yeah, turn 8, everybody just loses if they can't stop that. And so, yeah, it's a good setup. It's a slowish deck. Turn 7, turn 8 is when it really pops off. But again, I would wait to play Ixhel until you've already got these guys online. You've started getting poison counters before you actually do anything with it. But this is an example of how to build a deck that's probably going to always perform in some capacity. And this seems like this was not a bad build. It might actually be pretty fun to play at a casual table. It doesn't scare the bejesus. I mean, it scares people, but it's turn 8 maybe win if they don't have interaction for it. So it's not a super fast, like terrifying, run you over with infect deck. But it does look like it could be pretty fun. So let me know what you think about this. Let me know what cards I obviously missed that were super key to this, that would make this way better. How you would build this deck. What different things would you take the Finn package with the Death Touch out and sub that in for just more synergy or more card draw? What would you do with the deck and how would you play it? Very curious for you guys' thoughts. Very curious to hear more about what you guys think is a good way to build these decks. And if you like the rubric for how to actually go through step by step and build these decks, I'm really curious. I'm really interested and look forward to talking to you guys next time. Thanks again.